It's hard to put your finger on what situational awareness is, but the military have a basic formula. What's happened, what's happening, and what might happen. It's about knowing your surroundings well. There is a range of definitions.
Situational awareness is really the forerunner to making a decision.
Understanding what's around you, what are the factors that are having an influence on what you're doing today.
You know where the pilots are at all times, you know what the pilots are doing at all times, and you know what you have to do next to make sure the pilots get to the ground safely.
So situational awareness is definitely probably the biggest skill set needed.
Remaining aware of what can go wrong and asking the question of, am I still where I think I am? Understanding the array of information that's going on in the environment at that time, and then understanding how that then impacts on what they need to know right now. Situational awareness, to me, is that combination of people understanding the array of information that's going on in the environment at that time, and then understanding how that then impacts on what they need to know right now. So we in Qantas work very much with identifying cues. So the cues could be potential threats or hazards or social cues, and having them at least analyse that or identify them as a starting point. Because if people actually identify them as a start, then they're able to do something about it. And therefore, with situational awareness, or even the use of the word vigilance, then it requires a very high level of someone being able to remain vigilant, especially when workload or time or other pressures come in play. To me, it can come down even down to the basics of monitoring support role and looking at a pilot having the ability and the skills to be able to do that. It may even come down to them looking at various cues that are happening in the environment, and some of that can be down into proceduralised processes through to their overall scan patterns. And I know one of the initiatives that we now have built into our initial training is don't just take for granted that people's scan patterns enable them to maintain situational awareness. It's getting people to have a scan pattern, understand what they're looking for, and then being able to not necessarily just do it by habitual or rote, but actually take the time to identify what are the key elements in that scan pattern they need to know, and then how to come back into that monitoring environment.
I mean, many pilots will be familiar with the power curve, and I use that as a bit of a metaphor sometimes. So we know in the power curve or the drag curve that in an engine or a helicopter, fixed wing, it doesn't really matter. If you've got a certain amount of power available and then the aircraft has a certain amount of power required, we all know that as long as you've got a margin between power available, power required, the machine will keep flying. So I liken that oftentimes to situational awareness, where there's a certain amount of safety power required from a particular circumstance. There's a certain amount you can give based on your alertness, your experience and so forth, your training. As long as there's a margin there, it's fine. If there isn't a margin, that's when you lose situational awareness. So using a datum, coming to a stop as we can in helicopters, you can't do that in fixed wing, but even in fixed wing you can go in on orbit or you can give yourself a bit more time. You're actually lessening the demand on your cognitive abilities and giving yourself time to catch up. So always maintaining that margin and keeping that margin nice and thick between what I call safety power available, safety power required is really, really important.
Not only do you have to be aware of what's going on around you, situationally aware, you have to be proactive. And that's how we deal with it. And you never take anything on its laurels. You're always reassessing everything all the time. Things that you do take for granted and think couldn't be a problem can be a problem given the right circumstances. So you have to be extremely vigilant. And you have to bring that into all your pilots as well. So when they leave here, they've got that culture of looking around them, assessing the situation and working out how it can affect them.